You're listening to For the Republic, a love letter to Star Wars animation.
Hello there.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our Acolyte recaps here on For the Republic, a love letter to Star Wars animation. I can't believe we're already at the end of this season. It is insane, but we are here to talk about the season finale, hopefully just the first season, of The Acolyte, titled aptly The Acolyte. Andrew and Donovan are back here once again, and we are joined by, you may know her from the Geeky Waffle. It is Candace. How are you doing?
I'm doing so well. This episode stuck the landing. I am in my Star Wars happy place.
Yeah. Also, the person that gave us the winner of our inaugural Glut Madness tournament, Candace, who led Depabalaba to victory in said tournament. So that was a fun time.
I did not think she was going to win, but
the power of mother in Star Wars is insane.
Yeah, and just like she means so much to me. I'm half Indian, so when I saw Star Wars with my father, like he pointed her out to me, and like the Phantom Menace, and I was like, oh my gosh, Indian girls can be Jedi too. Awesome.
That is awesome.
That is an awesome story. That kind of segues me into what we like to do with guests that we've had on the show for the first time, which is one of the reasons we started this show is to not only talk about our love for this franchise, but to get those more personal connections to the franchise that each individual fan has had. So do you have like a first memory of discovering Star Wars for the first time, falling in love with the franchise? Anything that you'd like to share with us before we get started?
1997, the special editions. My father took me to them, and I thought, oh no, an old movie. I don't want to see an old movie from the 70s. Gross, you know? But he had taken me to Disney, every animated movie ever. So I was like, even as a small child, I was like, okay, I'll watch this for him. So I went, and like, seriously, like once Princess Leia was on screen, which, you know, in A New Hope is instantly, and she stands up to Darth Vader, who I just knew was scary. I was like, she's my hero. I love her. I am 110% in. And then I had him go to our local like video rental store when those were still a thing, and rent the Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. And he's like, don't you think your little sister will want to watch the first one? I'm like, no, I'll tell her what happens in the first one. I think she needs to see the second one, you know? But it's a vivid memory.
Great.
It's like core memory for me.
And that obviously just
I had a similar thing
went into
with the
Phantom.
Yeah, because my story was that like my parents rented the Phantom Menace from a Blockbuster, but I think around like 1999, 2000, and I was supposed to be asleep while they were test watching it to make sure I wouldn't be like freaked out by it. And I came downstairs in the middle of it, like around the Tatooine thing, and just stayed like for the rest of the film because I was so transfixed. I was like, this is so cool. And I watched the whole movie back the first thing the next morning because I was just like, I was so enraptured by this world. And it's like, yeah, so here we are.
It's a powerful tool, watching Star Wars for the first time. It can literally change your life, as is the case with everyone on this panel, because look at everyone now.
You could almost say it lost a spell on you, Andrew.
You could say.
I told my dad I was going to Tokyo, not just because of celebration, but like it's one of the reasons. And I'm like, it's your fault, dude. You took me to these movies in 1997. I remember it vividly. So anytime you're like, oh no, your Star Wars obsession, it's your fault.
I know you said
posters are fantastic, by the way.
Yeah, that's a very sick art wall right there. I know you said on Twitter that you were going to San Diego Comic-Con. Are you going to try to get into the Outlaws High Republic panel that they've announced? Or
do you know what day that is?
I have no idea.
Okay, because I'm only going to be there Friday and Saturday. Friday afternoon, I'm actually part of a panel. which is
Sweet.
it's my first San Diego, and I'm part of a panel. That's insane.
Awesome.
That is
Congratulations.
awesome.
Thank you. It's about unpacking female characters and like fandom and nerdom. So
I love that. That's
perfect.
Fantastic.
Yeah, something I could talk hours about, literally.
Yeah, no. I mean, we're gonna have to get a timer of how much we talk about Qimir in this episode. It's insane. But that's the beauty of fandom, is there's so many different ways to discuss it, so many different ways to just unpack it and just explore your love for things, and that's why we do the things that we do. Something stupid and silly that we do, though, is a segment here that we like to call our Jedi Archives.
Impossible. Perhaps the archives are incomplete.
For those new here, this is essentially our podcast Hall of Fame. Every week we nominate something Star Wars related, Star Wars adjacent, literally anything that has to do with a galaxy far, far away, sometimes in the loosest of terms. And we put it to a Twitter poll after the episode drops where you, that's right, you, the listener, can decide what our inductee is every week. Now, because we had 2 episodes drop this week, if you missed it, by the way, housekeeping, we were very late with our recap of episode 7. We weren't able to cover it last week, so we recorded it literally as the season finale was airing. That dropped yesterday as of recording. We're recording this on Thursday night. So go and check that out to talk about what happened on Brendok, hashtag what happened on Brendok, and get the full story there. But the week prior, we had a stacked list of nominees, but Donovan, you came out on top because your pick, Basil, is our newest inductee. So how about you start things off for us this week? What do you have in store for us?
So for this week's installment of the Jedi Archives, I'm once again nominating another book. I feel like it's quite fitting since we're coming to the end of this like phase of the Acolyte. Hopefully just the first of many, if Leslie gets away and we get a season 2, hashtag renew the Acolyte. But since we're marking the end of this series, I feel like it's just quite appropriate to also mark it with a High Republic book, specifically the one I have most recently finished, which is Path of Vengeance by Candace Kaw. And I'm picking this not just because I finished it just very recently, and it felt very historic to like finally get caught up on phase 2 and finally get into phase 3, but it's also just a really good book. It's a really interesting examination. It has a really great exploration of the characters of Yana Ro and Marda Ro, and it's a really good companion piece to Cataclysm, which I think is currently my personal favorite of phase 2, the novels, in terms of the sheer scope. But it also finally did what I was hoping would happen, and it kind of holds the whole ideology of the Path of the Open Hand up and kind of exposes it for what it is, and how it explores how like a cult mentality can really kind of take hold and twist otherwise good people into doing really kind of terrible things. And at the same time, it also has like this really great continuation of the High Republic comics with the character of Matty Cathley, and there's also some like involvement from Tace Eric and Vildar Mac from the High Republic comic.
Awesome.
It's just there's a lot here, and it's a fantastic conclusion to phase 2, and I definitely would recommend even the people who want to like maybe skim phase 2 and not read as much so they can get to phase 3, definitely read Path of Vengeance because it's a really good read.
Yeah, this has kind of been like your mini arc throughout these Acolyte reviews, is you getting through Path of Vengeance during the course of the episodes. So it's great.
Well, the Republic is my High Republic video diary of like how I'm making through the High Republic. I can't help it.
It's been me for a year, just stuck. Just
who watching High Republic? That's my brand right now.
Yep, pretty much. I'm so behind still with THR, but I've heard good things about Path of Vengeance, so I'm glad it's getting some shine here. I am going to go in a different direction. Because one of the things I've been watching besides the Acolyte recently is I've been getting caught up with The Bear, which is one of my most recent obsessions. So what am I going to nominate related to The Bear? I'm going in the Andor route. I am nominating Skeen into the Jedi Archives because he shares an actor with Rishi from The Bear, who is one of my absolute favorite characters. So quotable. And it just brings me back to when we were talking about Andor on the show. And immediately we were like, I don't know, man. This Skeen is just kind of suspect. I don't know if I trust him, but he, I don't know. He's a memorable character. I often go back to that rebel group on Aldhani of just like standout like one arc characters from that show and really of all of Star Wars. The fact that they've still kind of stuck with us, like Nemec is just like an endearing character. Almost 2 years since those episodes aired, and even though we only came out of those episodes with just the two survivors and Cassian, obviously, Skeen's arc and his character and what led to how that like changed Cassian was very integral to his character throughout that first season, especially when he was still at that point very like hesitant to further join the cause, and then he sees someone that's more corrupt and for himself, and then that leads to Narkina 5 and him fully being on board with the rebellion by the end of the season. So yeah, moral of the story, I mean, more long story short, I just really like the bear, and I just wanted to nominate Skeen. So that's my nomination this week. Candace, this is your first time putting something up with for the archives. Do you have something for us this week?
Yes, and I just binge watched All the Bear like a week or two ago.
I think
It's intense.
third episode of season 3 I'm on. I watched all season 2 about a week or two ago, and now I'm slowly getting through the third season.
I still need to watch it, but like that's only because I'm really behind.
Yeah, chef.
It really made me check up on all my friends and family who are in the restaurant business, because everyone's like, "Oh, it's so realistic," and I'm like, "Are y'all okay?
Are y'all okay? What is your mental state like?"
I would like to nominate the bleeding Kyber crystal of Soul's blade that becomes Osha's.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
That's a
Okay.
good pick.
Yeah.
I like that.
That's
Thank
a
you.
great
really
pick. It is
good.
one of my favorite scenes from the episode.
It's one of my favorite live action TV scenes, I think, ever.
So good. And
so much thematic imagery, like visual, like there's so much going on there. It's amazing.
Don knows how obsessed I am with figure collecting, and specifically like collecting the Black Series line. I really, really hope that like when we get a Sith Osha, that is the saber we get, where it's like the blue gradient into the red. Like that would look so cool. I'm not talented enough to make that, but that would look so cool. So please do that. But those are our nominees this week. We have Path of Vengeance, the High Republic Phase 2 novel. We have Skeen from Andor, and we have Osha's bleeding Kyber crystal from the Acolyte finale. So shortly after this episode drops, we will put out the poll in response to this episode on our Twitter at @ForTheRepubPod. You can go and vote on that poll afterwards and see what makes it into the archives this week. Now let's talk about the finale. Let's just get right into it. There was so many questions of how we were going to go from last week's bombshell to this week, how the characters would react to it. And we just are right away back at it with Osha still having the stranger's helmet on. One thing I was shocked about is I kind of assumed that the episode would, or last week's episode would be us hearing Mae and Osha's reaction to the truth in real time. It was interesting to me that Mae begins the episode knowing the truth, but Osha does not. Because I assumed that while she had the helmet on, she was going to learn the full truth that way through Qimira's twisted version of the Force. And we did get that being the crux to her fully going to the dark side in this episode. But it played out in a different way. And it was just kind of haunting to see her have the helmet and just immediately get consumed by the Force again. And Qimir struggling because her like Brendok witch powers kicks in and he is just fighting it, like how we saw Torben kind of had his mind possessed in the 7th episode. It was just crazy.
Yeah, like I really I liked that whole sequence because it kind of shows that Osha is a lot more powerful than she realizes with the Force, and how she only needs to tap into it. And it was really interesting to see, like as you said, Qimir look genuinely like freaked there for a minute, because like this is something Osha's power is something he is trying to like mold, like for her benefit as well as his. And it's what I think is really interesting about the dynamic that sets them apart from other like Sith masters and apprentices, that there is an honesty between them that eludes like say Palpatine and Vader or like other dynamics from Legends. But it was really cool, and I love the little flash of red in her eyes, like when he takes the helmet off. And Amanda Stenberg played that scene really well, like the rush of like emotion that Osha was feeling after the helmet came off. It was great. The vision was especially tragic as well that she saw. The minute that she said, "I see Mae, she's killing Sol," I immediately got jitters and was like, "Oh, is she sure she's talking about Mae there?" I don't think she's talking about Mae.
Yeah. It's just, it reminded me of Revenge of the Sith with Padme dying and what Anakin thought was happening. Force visions are just mean.
Yeah, TLJ too. Rey and Kylo both saw the same vision of them fighting side by side, and both took it in a different way. And just, I see Mae killing Sol. Little do you know. And it just kind of led to this thing where they are both, the stranger and Osha are both heading to where Osha knows Mae is going. And like they're saying they're not working together, but they go together, and like Qimir gives her like that like last chance to train with him, and she's still at this point just, no, I just want to find my sister. But you definitely can see a little bit of the writing on the wall at this point of like the path Osha is going down, because we know the full truth. And there are various lines throughout the episode of just showing how much Osha's emotions consume her, her anger, her rage, her disappointment in herself that she failed to become a Jedi. And we see that ultimately unleash on Mae during that fight that they have with each other later on in the episode. And then her rage is enough to have her fully consumed and kill her master, which was just shocking. I was worried that Sol was not going to make it out of the season. I didn't think it was going to be like this. And I didn't think Osha was going to be the one to do that. But here we are. Speaking of Sol, though, we kind of see a similar thing happen with Sol and Mae, but Mae is just still like, I need to get the hell out of there. And we get, I really, here's the thing with this scene, is I really enjoyed the space chase. I thought it looked great. I thought them going through like the rings of that planet was like the closest we've seen to the asteroid chase and Attack of the Clones. Like visually, it just got me right to there, and I thought it was maybe the best quote unquote space battle, like looks wise, that we've seen in a live action Star Wars show so far. I was a bit like, Basil's involvement confused me a little bit here, because I couldn't tell what he was trying to do.
I figured he eavesdropped on Sol and heard him like confess to like murdering her mother.
Mm-hmm.
And was like, oh, maybe Mae's not that bad. And maybe he thought that Sol was trying to kill her and keep it actually quiet.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually, because like he obviously can't like bum rush Sol the way that he did Mae, because like Sol probably would just like do a little force push and throw him against the wall. So like he kind of has to like use his wits a little bit more. But on that whole thing, that previous scene with Sol and Mae, I think what's really interesting is Sol doubles down.
Yeah, that shocked me.
That shocked me too. I genuinely thought he was so racked with guilt, and he is sort of still racked with guilt over everything that happened, but he keeps justifying it, and I think that's the kind of damning thing. I think that's
his way of coping. And dealing with the guilt.
It's the thing that stops him from kind of like going
more.
Yeah, because it's like I feel like if he hadn't been doubling down on it the whole time, hadn't been justifying it to himself and maybe to others, he probably would have taken the Barash vow or gone off into seclusion, kind of like Torbin and Kelnaka did. But it's kind of how he's been able to sort of like carry on as a Jedi all through these years, even while the truth of what's happened has been eating him up inside and arguably led to him failing Osha as her master.
I mean, I look back to that scene in episode 6 of him just like having a moment and just breaking after losing Jackie and losing Yord the previous episode. Like, you can tell how much things weigh on the guy, and like he's not a perfect person. I think the last 2 episodes have made that very clear. But I think Vernestra, while she fucked up at the end, had like a really like she was like, oh, he was a great person, but he made a mistake. And I think that is the best description I would say of Soul. He was a good man that made a mistake. It was a bad mistake, and it led to him losing his life.
It was good intentions, but bad choices.
Noble
were
intentions,
made.
but bad choices were made. Absolutely,
exactly that. Yeah.
But that leads to, because Basil shorts out the weapon system, they crash land on Brendok. We're like, oh, we're right back to where we began. To go back to Osha and the Stranger, we've been thinking the whole season that Qimir, we know he's a Sith, but we were like, okay, so he's probably not the master. He's probably the apprentice. Yeah. And this was like,
it was a long shot when I said it in episode 1. I was like, this probably isn't going to be addressed, but it would be kind of cool.
Said that this was his master, but I think it's pretty clear.
We see a little hand, don't we? We see a little hand.
Hand.
Just his roommate. It's just his
roommate.
Just this creepy roommate who just comes out of his room occasionally to just like glare at people from the shadows.
We all had a roommate like that once in our life.
Yeah.
True. Yes.
And we got freaking Plagueis. And can't say I was expecting it. He wasn't even the Sith I thought we were going to get in this show, because I thought Kymir's master was going to be a little bit further back in the timeline. I thought he was going to be the apprentice of Plagueis' master, who is Darth Tenebrous in Legends. But no, we got Plagueis, and I think this fits so well with the whole theme of this season, which is and of Soul's arc, which was of the twins' conception, and how the Brendok witches use that virgins to create life. And this Plagueis had to learn it somewhere. So
he did indeed. I was like, can we talk about how creepy he looked? It was just like the perfect way to introduce such a like mysterious and
I was
kind of
always
evil
wondering
Sith.
How they were going to make him look if they ever put him in live action or anything. Really,
yellow eyes, like
because like the Munes that we've seen in like Attack of the Clones look kind of goofy, but there was no
the banking plan will sign your treaty.
There was no camp to this look whatsoever. It was like, this is a scary looking man, and I think this adds further to the planet being Baldemnic theory, because that was where Plagueis killed his master in the Legends book. And I think it's just a great thing of like Qimir being there, but like his master's watching in the distance as he's seeing his student try to take on an acolyte to potentially overthrow him. And well, we know that isn't going to end well, just based on what we know, but I love it.
And the thing is, when I first saw that, my immediate thought was, oh, that's a great tease for season 2, because I mean, not to get too far ahead, but I think what's really exciting about season 2 is that just as season 1 kind of like delved into the flaws and the fallibilities of the Jedi, I feel like season 2 is really going to kind of like also flip the script and do that with the Sith, and show how the Sith, sadly, while there is that allure of freedom and doing what and being able to like unleash their emotions and stuff, that the Sith ultimately tend to consume one another, and like the longer the Sith masters like go on, the more they tend to be consumed by like power grubbing and like the hunger for immortality, as we see with Plagueis. So I kind of feel like, just to like boil it down, Qimir is almost like the dream of the Sith, and Plagueis is like the uncomfortable reality. One's like really, really cool, selling the allure because he believes in it. He genuinely believes in it with all his heart. And then his master is there, just like this walking reminder of, this is what the dark side does to people, just like it did to Anakin and Palpatine.
We see that really in excited. How he gets Osha to join him. He gives her that choice. And it was kind of like I thought it was kind of interesting that how when he was describing how Osha reacted versus how Mae reacted, Mae like just it didn't even take much to get Mae to join her, whereas Osha has that fight in her, has that doubt, that nuance to her character. And then even at the end, where Qimir agrees to Osha's terms to have her train with him, there's that allure of freedom, that allure of choice. But obviously, we know that the dark side is many things, and good intentions it is not. So very interesting. But I love the stuff that this could set up for a second season if we get one, because Leslie Headland pitched this as a Sith show, and this is like full bore master and apprentice, an acolyte of the apprentice. We could really dive into further like Sith ideology that we really haven't seen like to this extent in canon works, and just see how it leads up to Phantom Menace, see how we get to actually see Plagueis as a fleshed out character in canon. That's very exciting to me. As someone who's never read the Legends book, but really should and probably will after this episode,
Guilty
I hear
as well.
amazing things. And I'm very excited to see more of his character, and just see this lineage that would eventually lead to Darth Sidious himself.
I do just love the fact that like so many people are probably going to be reading that book now. Now that Plagueis has arrived in canon, fully in canon. He was always canon, to be clear, but like making an actual appearance
First
in
actual
the flesh.
appearance. Yep.
Making a first actual appearance. It's really gonna. I love that so many of the references here are going to inspire people to read that book, and I'm wondering how much of it is going to line up with what we see in a subsequent season of the Acolyte, since we're quite removed, a few years out, I think, from when the book takes place. But I'm going to try and read it once I've got through my my High Republic backlog. Like maybe I'll try and read it in conjunction with Eye of Darkness, but we'll see. What did you? I have to ask, Candace, what did you think of like the unveiling of Plagueis and how that's going to like pertain to Qimir and Osha's dynamic?
Well, first you're speaking about how the book is gonna be in canon and stuff like that. I think it's gonna be similar to how the Kenobi book was kind of used in the Obi-Wan Kenobi series. It wasn't the same story, but there was a lot of ideologies and just like vibes that were similar. Like Deborah Chow specifically says she read the book, and so did the writers. So I think they're going to definitely from there. Leslie's a huge fan of the EU, Legends, everything. She's seriously one of us.
Yeah,
so,
for sure. Like it's baked into the pores of the thing.
Yeah,
like in the
Yord was
and
a character she created in the tabletop games.
Yeah,
she
like
killed her OC.
I mean, who of us haven't?
Yeah, good point.
Exactly.
Good point.
But yeah, Plagueis, I was expecting maybe if we got a season 2, he'd show up, but I love that other major questions and major mysteries of the season were tied up, but we got this little tease, like, here's a little taste of what could be season 2, if we get it, a little mystery. But we didn't need it fully explained. He's there.
Yeah.
He's there. We know he's lurking. And we got a very similar tease at the end on the Jedi side, which I think was very smart. And I did read earlier today that I don't remember where Leslie had the interview with, but she basically said that Plagueis was always planned to be in the finale in one form or another. Originally, I think he was supposed to be the like end credits tease kind of thing, and then placed him in the episode, kind of just in the shadows, watching Osha and the Stranger, a Phantom Menace, if you will.
Yeah, because like she did the interview both like with IndieWire and with Maggie Lovett over at Collider, to talk about it. And what I really think was interesting was how she kind of likened how Plagueis's involvement there, like his appearance, is very much kind of like casting Osha and Kymir's dynamic in a very kind of Romeo Juliet, Bonnie and Clyde kind of vibe, where there is a sense that their partnership, however interesting it's going to be, is ultimately going to be doomed, like a lot of Darksiders, because we know that they're ultimately the Sith that is going to carry on is going to be Plagueis after this. He's going to meet Palpatine. I mean, we could be in for like a surprise. Maybe Osha and Qimir really do form the Knights of Ren, and that's like the element of their legacy that lives on, which would be really interesting. We have got the Kylo Ren theme playing with both Osha and Qimir, which is
it's fueled
really
the shippers.
interesting.
It fueled the shippers.
It was very appropriate, I must say.
Yeah.
I also liked the subtle use of the like ruminations theme from Revenge of the Sith when you see Yoda speaking over. It was so cool.
Oh, that was because that's when I was like, this has to be Plagueis, right? And then you hear like the deep, like throaty choir, from
that kind of
opera
stuff.
House, which is why it took. You know what it took me back to? It took me back to 2015 Star Wars.
Oh, it's so. That's what I was gonna say.
Yeah, when, like you hear that in the Force Awakens, they're like, oh my god, he's Darth Plagueis, and we
Darth Plagueis.
that was the big theory for 2 years.
We all kind of like.
I
definitely bought into it at one point. Yeah, like there was a lot of that kind of stuff. It made what happened to Snoke at The Last Jedi all the more surprising, for sure.
Yeah, Leslie in this episode really said, "You want Reylo? We'll give you Reylo." And
you want Plagueis? We'll give you Plagueis.
Yep. I still, it's so cool. But Don, didn't you hear? We have a new birthday controversy. Well, it's not really a controversy. It was just, he should be a teenager. Shut up.
Like he already mentioned. Like he mentioned in this is one thing I do know about the book. He mentions that he's been training with his master for over 100 years by the time he meets Palpatine. So actually, his age is actually fully in canon with Legends currently. Like, and also we don't know how long Mune live. Like, we didn't know how long Syrians live fully, and that's what made the whole controversy over Kiadi Mundi so freaking stupid.
Legend sources are different. That's not anything. Like, again, it's called Legends for a reason. It's not the current canon anymore, so they can change it, and I think it actually works. Like, you see how creepy Plagueis looks? Like, that. If you tell me, that guy's been alive for hundreds of years, I believe it.
It's very Gollum. It's very the Nazgul kind of vibes, like the creepiness in the shadows, the like bright eyes, the hooded figure. It all lines up perfectly with what we're meant to think of him. And I'm just really excited to see what Leslie would do and her team would do with like such a mysterious and enigmatic character like Plagueis.
Just the creepy like hand on the cave.
Like exactly.
It's so good. I can't wait. I cannot wait. But it was just like the fact that this episode was so good to me, that wasn't even like the top 3 takeaways from this episode for me. It was like, no, we got arguably one of the best lightsaber duels of all time. We got really compelling character stuff, and then just everything that came from it. Such a great episode. And then we just kind of get this little chase between Osha, Mae, the Stranger, and Soul.
We should probably talk about the little bit with Vernestra first, though. Like
with the senator,
Aaron Rayencourt. Yeah, with Aaron Rayencourt making his like surprising appearance.
Vern,
what did you guys all think of Rayencourt? Out of curiosity,
I think
makes some good points.
He does.
Yeah,
he does. He also kind of like represented how Soul was quick to label the Witch Coven as like a cult. Rayencourt does the same thing with the Jedi, which is very interesting. But he definitely represents a lot of the policing and influence that the Senate would have over the Jedi. And it really we're seeing a lot of things that make what we see with the prequels and the Jedi, them being more dogmatic, them being more reliant on the Senate. Like having these stories to show why that was the case and how they really started to lose their way. This episode as a whole really felt like a not definitive per se, but like a spiritual end to the High Republic as an era, and further like to the start of the fall of the Jedi from what we see here.
Because yeah, I was going to add on to that like you're absolutely right. I think Rayancourt definitely his pushing for that bill that marks the supervision of the Jedi. I definitely think it signals the transition from the High Republic into the fall of the Jedi era that is the prequels. And I think what's fascinating about him is that he's spot on with everything he says about how the Jedi don't have a full grasp on their emotions. You know, one of them is eventually going to snap, and that's going to cause catastrophe. And it's not a not so subtle allusion to Anakin. But what's interesting is while he's completely spot on, the actions that he's taking to remedy this are actually going to be the things that sort of set the Jedi up to be almost wiped out and put one of them in the position to snap, as he put it, which is like, because you don't get Anakin snapping and turning against the Jedi Order without Palpatine being there, and Palpatine rises to the power that he does because the Senate starts having more control over the Jedi and Council and the Jedi Order as a result, like supervising what they're doing. And that's why the Jedi get roped into the Clone Wars and weakened to the point where Palpatine can turn Anakin and wipe them all out. So it was just a really cool scene, really interesting scene of contradictions between both him and Vernestra. And the actor David Harewood, he was really good. I kind of feel like I'd seen him on another show, like a show in the UK at one point, and that kind of made me think. Really,
do we have one?
We have one, yes. So
it's back.
Yeah, it's time for another episode of Who Watch. Full disclosure to listeners, I never tell Andrew when there's going to be one. I just spring it on him just because it's like fun to like point this out. But yeah, David Harewood marks an actual full Who Watch episode here, because last time I had an actress who was like in one of the Big Finish audio adventures for Doctor Who, but with David Harewood, he was in the full show. He was in the 2-part special that aired in 2009, The End of Time, which was David Tennant's like original farewell storyline as the 10th Doctor. Utterly that 2-part episode is so ingrained. I sobbed as well. I watched that with my whole family. We were crying even before the episode started. It was Christmas, yeah.
It was Christmas, and me and my friend is sobbing, and we're like, "It's Christmas. We shouldn't be crying." We knew he was coming. We knew he was leaving.
Yeah, and it's like even the like little ident at the start, like with him and the reindeer, like on BBC One, I was like, we were already crying because it had been such a big part of my life, and I was like, it was such a like transition, like to see him leaving. But enough about David. David Harewood, the character he played a character called Joshua Naismith, who was like a billionaire and kind of like a lot of real life billionaires, kind of like winds up putting the villain of the piece, the master, in a position of power simply so he can benefit from the situation. And he was a really it was a really cool appearance from him. Like he's definitely gone on to do like bigger things since then, like with his roles on like Supergirl, for instance, playing Martian Manhunter. But it's really cool to see him from like that show go from here to like playing such a enigmatic character like Rayancourt. And I kind of hope we see Rayancourt again, to be honest, like to see
like the main cast, so it's possible.
Yeah, like I thought he was going to be Tenebrous, but it was like I'm actually really glad that he was Rayancourt, because
could you imagine if he was, and then you drop a Who Watch on me? I mean, it's nice.
Tenebrous was in Doctor Who the whole time.
After having like one seemingly every episode during Andor, we barely had any with the Acolyte.
Bless Andor for that. I never would have thought of Who Watch if it hadn't been for Andor filming in the UK. I love Andor for that.
You got to go back now that Cinta was in an episode.
Exactly.
She's going to be a companion.
We're going to get a
reverse Who Watch.
Yeah,
Cinta is like reverse Who Watch. Thank you for reminding me, Candace. I am marking the first episode of Andor season 2, or at least the first episode that Cinta shows up in. That's getting a Who Watch for sure, simply by Cinta being in Doctor Who, which I'm so excited. Her and Ncuti Gatwa as like a pairing. That's going to be fantastic. I love it.
They need to just, as an in-joke, just have an episode where every like guest actor is just a Doctor Who alum, just because it would give us material.
There's only so many there, and so much of this is shot in Pinewood Studio. There's got to be like that overlap.
Yeah,
give me Billie Piper in Doctor Who at some point. I mean, I kind of fan cast her for a little bit as I'm blanking on her name now from the Nile. Lorna D. I kind of fan cast her as Lorna D for a bit, but like I'd happily take Billie Piper in any Star Wars role because she's awesome. Or Freema Agyeman, to be fair. Freema Agyeman too. She was kind of my cast list on my fan casting for the former Jedi, whose name I'm also blanking on, who was in The Rising Storm, who's really awesome.
I know who you're talking about, but I can't think of her name either.
The Monster Hunter character, yes.
Is it Ty York? Am I getting that right?
I think it's Ty Yorick, yeah. I think it's Ty Yorick, yeah. She was awesome. I loved the Monster at Temple Peak comic book. I think Freema would be really good as Ty Yorick.
That was one that surprised me because it was technically an adventures comic, and it was dark, and I was not expecting that. But that was a good one. That was a really good one. You know what else was really good was this everything about the lead up to this Soul and Qimir fight, because you have Mae just kind of escape, go back into her old home, her old fortress where it all began. Great moments throughout with multiple characters where they kind of hear the events of that tragic night on Brendok play out again. You see just the trauma that Mae and Soul have gone through from this area. And you even have Vernestra have a bit of psychometry in later on in the episode with that same scene, kind of sensing everything as it happened, which was really cool to see that in live action. But thank you for leading me to her. We make a great team. So chilling. I like many things about Manny Jacinto in this role. That mask voice is something else. It just sounds so cool. I feel like they save his best quotes for when he has the helmet on. Because there was another one I loved in this fight when the ship kind of like comes into vision. And they're not here for you or for me. It was just, I loved it. It was so good. So just break down, how did you feel about this scene? Because it was so good.
I thought for a second when Soul sliced his lightsaber, I thought he might have sliced.
I thought he killed him.
And I said, no, Soul, not Manny Jacinto. Like, you're supposed to have at least another season with this guy.
Yeah, it was kind of like Twin Sons-esque, wasn't it? Like where they
that's exactly
where Obi-Wan and Maul like fight, and then
I kind of had a moment where I was like, who went down? Who sliced who? Because we knew Manny lost his saber, but it was just there were so many moments from him using the Force to just with the blades and everything.
Oh yeah, and then
it was
Soul using the Force to push him away and the blades at the same time. I love when Jedi use the Force in battle like that. Yeah. Because it's something we see a lot in live action, and we see that a lot in the animation. But live action has been mostly like just, dueling. But we see the Force where they're like, using their hands to force, at each other. But this was like the Force to the next level, which was very exciting.
It was very elegant, like the way he just kind of like, it's almost like he was channeling like this mystical energy to literally like force everything away, like as opposed to like the standard like force push. It was just really cool to see, and I loved like the way he Lee Jung Jae just like slid into his like pose with the lightsaber at the end, and there was so many cool aspects of it. I loved the very kind of like frenetic fighting, like carving through the walkway, and the amazing like wire fu like leap down. It was just, that was really cool. I love when the fights get a little more like intense with the use of the Force and stuff. Like it's very kind of like Old Republic MMORPG like trailers, like the CGI trailers. There was a lot of that kind of vibe kind of bleeding into the fights, and it was just really cool. And I liked that it showed that they were on kind of an even keel in terms of their abilities. Like it shows Soul's fighting prowess as a Jedi, and shows how like capable he is. And it also kind of like makes me think about another character that shows up towards the end, and how her fighting style probably puts her on a few notches above Soul and Qimir, judging by his reaction. But it was just a really cool fight, and mention the incredible snap cut between Osha and Mae, like kicking each other, and
I
Oh,
love
it
that.
was
That was amazing.
so good.
that was a good edit,
I
man.
yelled
That's
at that. The dog was like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "No."
No, I'm not actually.
like,
but yeah,
you go first. Sorry.
Oh, my favorite thing is like at the end, and Soul like has bested him. Qimir knows, like he won't kill like a defenseless man, and he takes off his helmet specifically so he can see his eyes, and he just knows like how to manipulate like that, which is like one of his greatest strengths. And I love that in a Sith. You know, I love that in a bad
manipulator. He is so good at it.
He's so much trouble.
Qimir is like
He's
top tier bad guy. Like I'm so like impressed with Manny's performance. I think he's just been an absolute star in this. You know, it's nuts that he's come all the way from like having all of his lines cut in Top Gun Maverick, which I love that film, but that is
I didn't even know he was in it.
Yeah, I didn't know he was in it until researching before the Acolyte. And I love that movie. I was like, Manny Jacinto was in that?
One does not waste Manny Jacinto. Like I'm most familiar with him from The Good Place, and he plays such a himbo.
It's Jason from The Good Place is giving us this all-time performance.
It's like just like his voice work. Like that's because you spend like dozens of episodes with someone, so you're like, okay, he must be kind of like that in real life. He's so good at this. But then like you see him here, and it's just like you can't even compare Jason and Qimir. Like if you put them, like you wouldn't think they were even the same actor. It's such a different performance. Sure. The way he carries himself, the way he speaks, everything.
Indeed. Like my favorite bit, I think my favorite scene of his in the whole show currently is like when he turns to Mae and says hello, and that very kind of good voice, pulls her towards him, and then he just turns his voice around and goes, "You really didn't know it was me." And I'm like, that was the point where I was like, yeah, this dude's a really good actor.
That's when you know it's like this dude is insane. And I love the fact he did all of his stunts, and they had another great behind the scenes reel that they posted today. It's so good.
I'm going to repeat, if Manny Jacinto should be getting all the action comedy roles, like ever.
Put him in a rom-com and action everywhere. Just put this man everywhere, but make sure he has time for season 2 when it does get announced, because it will get announced. I'm putting it out into the world.
You got to maintain those biceps, Manny. You have to for the good of the world.
His wife actually posted like a little video of him watching it on Instagram. Dude is keeping up his arm game, or his,
we love to see it for sure.
I love that he was watching it, so because like this must be the first time he's watching it like as a finished piece, and he was captivated too. And I'm like, you should be. You did such a good job. Another thing I
couldn't agree more.
Another thing I really liked about this fight was the fact that their lightsabers were like wrecking stuff. It was messy and things like that. And we see a little bit of that like in the Revenge of the Sith, like Anakin and Obi-Wan duel, but they're just much cleaner. I love that, they're just like tearing it through things. Lightsabers are going to destroy whatever they touch. So that just made it feel more real to me. Again,
it further emphasized like the unique movement of the Stranger's fighting style that we saw in Night, and just see that in a full expanded one-on-one duel. And it was also just a great like final like last hurrah for Soul as like this great Jedi to have this excellent lightsaber duel and just really look like a hero for the last time before he's torn down by his own actions. But again, you just, like you said, he can't take him down. He says at the beginning, "I will strike you down if I must." But you just know that like it's not going to happen, because he didn't do it right after he watched Qimir kill his apprentice right in front of him. And we know that Soul is not a great example of Jedi forgoing attachments. That's kind of his Achilles heel throughout this series for both him and Osha. It just so happened that Osha's happened in a more violent way. But again, you mentioned Revenge of the Sith. It was also great that we got, like how Anakin and Obi-Wan and Yoda and Palpatine had their duels at the same time. We got the fight between Mae and Osha, at the same time, which we mentioned, I briefly alluded to their reunion earlier in the episode, where Mae kind of had, like, gives Osha, she tells her the truth. And I don't know if it's her just violently denying it, but she just cannot control her rage at all. Just screams at her, complete 180 of how we were introduced to these characters.
Yeah.
Where Mae at the beginning of the season was just pure revenge, pure rage, vengeance for what happened to her family and to her coven, and taking out against the Jedi as she's being corrupted by the dark side. Whereas Osha was that symbol of hope, that still believing in the Jedi. And now that we just see Mae is more wanting Soul to face the council for what he did, wanting that justice for her family, for her mother. And Osha is just pure rage, just going at her again. More mirrors of that Soul and Mae fight from the second episode that we had last week too, with Soul and Coral, which I love that they've gone back to that fight twice now. And I gotta shout out the show and everyone that worked on it, just for the fact that we know this is Amanda playing both roles, and the fight looks this good.
I know.
I don't know how they did, but I just love how they both are, like, using the same type of, like, martial arts against each other. This is, again, like a further just awakening in the Force for Osha, which, again, in episode 6, Qimir has that line of, like, oh, it's not soul strength in the Force, it's yours, Osha. And we were like, oh, is that true? Or is he just, twisting the knife further to get her more and more under his wing? But no, it's very much the case in this episode. We see how adept Osha is in the Force, and when her emotions are the driving force behind it. Because again, this fight was awesome. Candace mentioned the edit of their dual kicks mixed with the lightsabers clashing. I think I've had some issues with the editing of this show. This was not one of them. This was like the bravo, put this on an Emmy reel, for best editing. It's so good. And it works so well. It was just a pump your fist kind of moment. And everything about these two fights I loved, and how they intertwined, where Mae ends up intervening and stopping Soul. We knew he wasn't going to take the stranger, but just kicking his lightsaber out of the way.
Yeah.
And then stuff started going down. So again, do you have any more to add before we get into what happens next?
So the main thing I'll add is just quickly, you mentioned the conversation between Mae and Osha, and it very much kind of played to me because we talked last episode very briefly about what could happen in the finale, and it really was kind of like the fake script from Empire Strikes Back, the Obi-Wan killed your father revelation instead of I am your father, and it was just really interesting to see that employed in the way that it was. And I think you're right. I think Osha was kind of violently refusing to accept it because Mae has up to that point been acting out of selfish intentions, and she kind of feels like Mae perhaps is just saying whatever she can to try and sway Osha away from supporting the Jedi. But it was a really excellent fight, and I liked how, again, like you said, they are on completely opposite places from where they started, where you have Osha giving in more to the rage and the grief that she feels, and you have Mae kind of even while she probably would hate to admit it, she's becoming more and more like a Jedi in the way that she lets go of her hate, her anger, and her vengeance, and as later on in the episode will choose to let go of her own attachment that has been driving her to make a lot of these decisions, and that's really fascinating to watch.
Oh, it just reiterates how they are the same.
Yeah.
That maybe they're even kind of they can see what the other's going to do.
Yeah.
So I really love that they're so evenly matched.
It's very Obi-Wan Anakin, isn't it? How they can almost sense each other's moves. That bit where she does the kind of Osha does the spring sort of back up to avoid the underhand kick that Mae is doing. It's just really cool to see how they're they're almost predicting each other's moves, and like you said, it's a really cool fight, and I love the transition again back to like Soul and the Stranger, and then I think it's probably the time to talk about like that moment.
Yeah.
Like Andrew and you guys both said, like you pretty sure that Saul wasn't going to make it through this season. But that's the thing about the Acolyte is you can kind of predict what's going to happen, but you don't know how it's going to happen. And I think that's the most amazing thing, because this is the most surprised I've ever been watching any Star Wars ever, is it has continuously shocked me. Like, we knew Qimir was probably the Stranger just based on, the context clues. But I didn't know Jackie and Yord were going to be murdered by him.
Shocked me.
I'm still reeling from that. It's still like the most reeling thing to me that they were both killed so like in such a brutal fashion. Too. Yeah, and so early as well. Like they felt like such a heart of the show, and I think it's it's very notable that the minute they're gone, the story gets way more morally complex and a lot more like darker in terms of how the Jedi are portrayed, and that's kind of why they both had to die, sadly, because like they would have. There's no chance that Osha would have even turned to the dark side had those two lived, because they were arguably the anchor that was holding both her and Soul. They were kind of like holding them onto both of them to the light, keeping them both sort of grounded there. And the minute that they're gone, Soul, it becomes unbalanced and carries on doubling down, tripling down on what he did. And Osha is like literally a powder keg of emotions, like ready to go off, which Qimir sort of like helps finesse and get her to a point where she can finally unleash all of her anger and her rage and her grief. And it makes that whole scene where like Mae, because Mae is genuinely trying to get him to confess at that point. I think I thought at first that she was maybe trying to manipulate him to admit this so Osha would hear it, but I think it's more just that Mae just wants the truth. She just wants him to tell the truth. She has been scapegoated the entire time this series. She was blamed for everything really, with what happened on Brendok, with the death of Kelnaka, and I mean, she did kill Indara and technically Torben, but it's very interesting that like she has been blamed the whole way through for pretty much everything. She's as the root cause of everything, and yet she was. The sad thing is, despite Osha saying, "Oh, you got what you wanted after all," Mae is the one character that ends this series never really getting what she wants, because like all she really wanted was to live a life with the Coven, and when that failed, to be with her sister, and she kind of has to like give that up by the end. And I think it's really interesting that it kind of shows that she, despite hating the Jedi, she arguably has a lot more in common with the Jedi in terms of how she's able to genuinely release that attachment to Osha and let go of her hatred and her anger to Soul, and in doing so gives the kind of like emotional catharsis over to Osha to do what she does, which is it's such a messed up scene to watch, but it's also weirdly kind of like satisfying from a narrative perspective, because it's like it kind of feels like a kind of karmic vengeance for Soul, sadly, because I was almost I was going back and forth on like how like much he deserved like a death, so to speak, but like the fact that he refused to take accountability for it, like even to the end, like he was still trying to justify everything. Like as much as there was like noble intentions there, and he genuinely had a love for Osha, the fact that he kept justifying killing her mother, it was just never going to fly with anyone.
And the fact that he was trying to justify it by saying he loved her, which is an abusive tactic. I did this because I love you.
And that's why he doesn't finish. That's why he gets cut off, because it's like it's the breaking point.
That's when she's like,
stop talking. Like she can't tolerate it anymore, and it's really sad that like Soul is so convinced that simply because he has these feelings, he feels like that justifies everything he's done, and he's so blinded by his attachment to Osha that he just cannot accept any kind of responsibility, like full responsibility to it. He almost kind of like refuses to admit that he killed Mother Anasea until like a moment of hesitation. And I do have to wonder, like,
just says it, and you just, because he says it to Mae, and then Osha hears it
And the only reason is because Mae was there and saw it.
I know.
So I feel like that's the only reason he did admit it.
Exactly, because he couldn't lie to Mae. Mae saw the full situation there with her own eyes, and I love the way,
because he's so gung ho about the fact that the two of them, how they were created, and the fact that they were created as one person, always one, but born as two. And his thing, I wanted everything I could to save both of you. With one of you gone, I had no proof. I didn't have the proof I needed to show to the council. And then again, you mentioned that like he is using like love bombing and abuse tactics to like justify it to Osha, but I still think that's like how he feels. And,
that doesn't make it any less abusive if that's how he feels.
True.
No, it doesn't at all.
It's like it's a really kind of like interesting thing because it's like it shows how he's so blinded by that attachment. He can't see how he's hurting Osha through these tactics, through this like kind of admission of like, oh no, I did everything because I loved you, and it's like that doesn't make it okay.
How many times I wanted to tell you,
which is very much the senator was talking about. The downfall of the Jedi is their emotions, and the fact that they're taught not to love, not to truly love, not to have any form of attachments means they most likely are only going to have unhealthy attachments. So
100%. That for me hits the nail on the head because like it is the definition of an unhealthy attachment with Sol and Osha. Like as much as he might have felt a rapport with Osha, like he basically never gave her the agency to like kind of like explore her grief and her rage. Like he tells her in the second episode, oh, this is grief, let it go. And it's like that's not how grief works. Grief doesn't you can't just release grief. It's like that follows you. Like you've been troubled by your own grief for years over what happened on Brendok, and you still aren't processing it.
That it was too fast of a turn.
Oh, but I know. I don't agree with that at all.
With your father figure, the person you think of as your father.
Yeah, your father murdering your mother.
You blamed your sister. So for 16 years, you believed your sister was the cause of all that destruction. And also, I keep going back to Osha, like, it's so tragic because she loses the coven, the family, and then she joins the Jedi, and that's technically her new family. And then they abandon her, which she is the loneliest like person in the galaxy.
Yep,
she really is.
And
it's the saddest thing.
And it's so easy to understand why she did it.
She says to Mae, like, totally. I've spent years hating you and hating what you became. And then to find out that the person that you loved the most killed your mother and was partly responsible for everything that happened on Brendok. Like, obviously, that's going, as we see for someone who it was shown earlier with that Mae scene, just how just volatile she can get and just scary she can get when she's not in control of her emotions or when she lets her emotions consume her. That yes, this does it is like the ultimate boiling point. And I think everything, I thought this was framed and directed absolutely perfectly. Having Sol get cut off right as he's about to say he loves her, which is just it hurts. And then the force choking, because you just see it, and I'm like, oh my god. And at first I was like, who's force choking her? Like, is it Qimir? Is it Mae? And you see it's
and the
Osha.
Slow raising of the hand.
And as the slow raising the hand, the stop talking, cutting to the saber and seeing it slowly start to turn around, I was like, oh my fucking god.
Okay, can we talk about the fact that saber is a saber that killed her mother?
Yes, like it's so good. The visual symbolism of it is absolutely fantastic. Like there's Leslie and Maggie go into it really well in like the Collider interview. I won't go into that here. But one thing I kind of really like about it is when the lightsaber turns red, it's almost like thematically, because the truth has finally come out, the truth has been unveiled. It's like the violent, dark act that blade performed is now fully unveiled. The veneer of Jedi nobility that was kind of like covering it up is now gone, and in its place is this like darkness that is like twisted, but it's very true ultimately the very true violent act of what that blade did. And it's just the framing of it is like fantastic as well. Like I love the fact that there's the little vein pulsing in Osha's hand, like going into the crystal, and like the slow just kind of like the way it just turns to red. It's fantastic. I've seen some people kind of like question why it was almost like so seemingly so little effort for Osha, and I kind of like that
That's how powerful her anger was in that moment.
It's not. I don't think it was little effort. I think that it was so intimate because that is the saber of her father who killed her mother. Who also, we talk about like the Kybers having emotions and like the Jedi having connection to it. That Kyber and that Jedi has 16 years of guilt with that.
So it's very vulnerable.
And now that's
like,
her Sith weapon.
She's taken it for herself, and it's like
bleeding of crystals.
I think if Anakin had killed Obi-Wan, the same thing would have happened.
Yeah, because that's the thing I saw. How come Anakin's didn't turn red during the Mustafar battle? Well, one, because the concept didn't exist yet.
What's really funny is that they've already thought of that. That's already all covered, because the reason that happened is because the Kyber crystal is exposed. You have to actually touch the Kyber crystal physically to do that. And Mae breaks the lightsaber partially when she throws
it's broken.
It away.
It's not connected to the lightsaber.
Yeah. The Kyber crystal is poking out of the lightsaber. It's physically touching Osha's hand. So there's the explanation. It's very like simple. And I love that. Go ahead.
I honestly don't think, I think people are watching this while they're on their phones and they're not noticing these things.
100%. Like 100%. Like
I'm like, it's all there.
Budget on this.
The armchair critic mentality for sure. Like
literally like every, like again, critiques of the show are fine, but the ones that are making the rounds and being like the parroted talking points because you saw some grifters say it are just the most like, just watch the fucking show kind of thing.
Come on with your own criticism.
Even people who were like, they were saying like, oh, I don't understand how Osha like used the Force so fast or things like that. I'm like,
that's how the dark side works.
That's how the dark side works.
It's not a Sabine kind of thing where that was her first time tapping into the Force. She was trained as a Jedi, and it was said in the first episode that she did have problems like utilizing the Force, and that's why she is kind of severed from it at the beginning of the series. But it's not like this was like her first time ever using the Force in her life. This is just
also,
I think
I feel like she used the Force when she put on the helmet. Yeah, that was her first time using the Force in a while.
And also remember, if there's a vergence on Brendok, that further explains everything and why the Force
they're in the heart of it.
Yeah, exactly. And I literally just thought of that right now. Again, it's not that hard to comprehend some of these things. This isn't freaking War and Peace. It's like I love the show.
Star Wars is not
subtle. It's not Star Wars. So
subtle, but again, it's not.
I think the most heartbreaking thing for me is when like you just see this powerful moment of anger and retribution for Osha, but it's so tragic when it turns into the Kylo Ren Han Solo thing, where Soul just as he's getting killed is like, it's okay.
Yeah.
It killed me. I was like, my God. The tear, it's all right. Because
Legion J
knows
Give him
that this is what she needs to do. I
don't think if that character was played by, well, maybe another actor, he would have been so beloved, because I think like there's so much heart brought into Soul.
So much heart,
100%. I feel like if there was another actor, I don't think many actors could manage the trick of like making this character feel very likable but also having enough notes of shiftiness and uncertainty in the early episodes to make you buy that they would do something like they do in episode 7. And Legion J has just sold that all the way through. There's a genuine warmth to Soul. There's a nobility that actually kind of gives him the potential of being a great Jedi Master, but there's also that instability. There's that fixation on emotions and that attachment with Osha that just really ultimately bring him down, just take him to a dark place. And that final scene of him just like fully like in his death accepting that, you know, this is I have created this is the situation I have laid before me, so I must accept it. And I've seen
another
some
thing
people
I
say
just
that
thought of now. Qimir has the line in episode 5, "I've accepted my darkness.
what have you done with
What have you done with yours?"
He's
And
put it.
this
Yeah,
could be seen as him
yeah,
in his final moments, just
accepting his darkness.
fate,
And hey,
accepting his darkness.
Osha killed a Jedi without a weapon.
Yep.
We all wondered how they were going to do it, and it turned out to be like one of the more obvious guesses, a Force choke.
Or
which is like,
no, it wasn't really even Osha. It was Mae who killed him without a weapon.
the truth.
Because
She used the truth.
she told, Osha, so she didn't have to do anything.
Yeah.
So
didn't.
I feel like Mae is the one who actually
This is
technically fulfilled what she promised to the
Again.
stranger.
I thought Soul was either dying or he was gonna leave the episode in the season with his reputation ruined because Brendok
He
was
did
gonna be
both.
thrown on him. And they did both to the guy. So not only is he dead, but he gets smeared after
But
death.
honestly, I think that's what he would have wanted if it meant that at least Mae could have some peace.
Make it have some peace.
I agree.
The whole thing's blamed on Soul. And again, it's still the Jedi. Still at this point, no one knows that the Sith are out there. So shut up about that. Okay.
What a shock!
What
Like
a shock.
they never found
That's-
out.
It's almost
That was the
like-
thing that was bugging me this whole season with the discourse. Is they're like, it contradicts this, it contradicts that. I'm like, just wait till the series is over, the season's over, and we'll see. And look, it's all there.
The
Yeah.
thing that I just never understood were the people that claim to be like big Legends people, but were so like adamant. It's like, well, the Sith were extinct for 1,000 years, and now they're suddenly Sith again. It's like, dude,
Where did Sidious come from? Sidious
Yeah,
and Maul are right
you think
there.
they just-
Plagueis
it's like,
come
oh,
from?
there we go. We're live now.
Like,
Yeah, how did
Darth-
Plagueis? Like, obviously,
Yeah, like Darth Bane
the
as well. Like, where
Jedi-
did Darth Bane's whole like rule of two thing come from? Like, it's just
Mm-hmm.
these people. Like, it's they kind of tell me you don't actually pay attention to this stuff without telling me because it boggles the mind, and it oftentimes I just really feel like it is just people just trying to rile folks up who actually do care about this stuff simply to just get rage clicks because it's just
get
like.
money.
Yeah, because they're so obviously wrong in very clear and obvious ways that you kind of like doubt how genuine they're being with their rage.
I am glad that the season is over. Not because I didn't like the show, but I'm glad that Acolyte discourse is over for now for two simple reasons. One is I don't have to see 18 billion clickbait. This Acolyte episode introduced this big plot hole for this Star Wars movie. It's like, just watch the show. The show's not over yet. And two, so I don't have to see people like quote tweet the Soul Stranger fight and be like, what the hell is this crap? I'm like, dude, like, are we watching the same thing here?
It's awesome is what it is.
Yeah.
What's the matter with you?
Like, I hate it. I hate people. Like, there's just, people will just, they can't ever just admit when something works. And again, if
Kind
the
of
show
like
didn't
Soul.
work for you, it's
Yeah.
fine. But
Maybe
like,
that's why they're
stop.
in such denial. They're
Yeah.
like, oh my god, they're like, they
Oh
see
my
me.
god, I'm Soul. Am
Oh
I
no,
Soul?
I feel seen here. I feel seen. They're doing all the things I wanted to do. That I wanted them to do with Legends and stuff. But I can't admit that I like it.
I can't admit that I like it because it's directed by a woman.
Yeah, because it's a woman directing it, and
lesbian.
she's showing such media
That's
literacy
what
and
they
understanding of Legends.
Complex, nuanced characters. I can't. I don't know. I need things told to me straight away. I need to know everything that happens right off the bat.
I saw so many complaints about like
It's a
I wish they
murder
would just
mystery.
tell us what's going on, and I'm like, it's a mystery, guys. I beg of you, watch something else other than Star Wars and the MCU.
Watch other shows.
Beg of you,
goddammit.
read
Like,
a book.
Read page
some-
1 of an Agatha Christie novel. All right, so who killed it? Yeah, this breaks lore.
Like
We
it
don't know who killed
advertised
them?
as a mystery.
Exactly.
Wait a second.
Wait a second.
Yeah.
It's
They got
also
so mad
supposed to
that
be in
the show
suspense.
needs time to.
Yeah, that Kymir's helmet wasn't explained while it was like, what was it doing to the lightsabers? When I was watching it, I'm like, that's freaking cool. I'm like, it seems familiar, but I can't remember, but I don't care because there's an amazing fight going on. Then the very next episode,
Next
they
episode.
explain it. What did you expect them to
Exactly.
do? You're to be like, time out, everybody. I gotta tell you about what this metal's made of. Like,
The freaking. Just a Pokemon at the Pokedex shows up. Cortosis.
like- like the flashbacks.
Yeah,
in the
Pip
Flash
just
comic.
pops up. He's like, "So you want to know?" No.
Yeah, C-3PO comes in the corner. Oh my god, that's cortosis.
Like Basil just sort of like waddles in with his like just his little like pointy stick to like a graph and stuff. Yeah, that would.
I've even seen here. It's like, how come Yoda didn't say something to Vernestra about what happened on Kofar? He didn't say anything.
Well,
it was a half a second.
People were already mad about like, well, she told Yoda about this. We don't know what she told Yoda, y'all. We have
Vernestra doesn't know about
zero
this.
idea. We
Here's
have
the thing.
zero idea of what.
I'm so excited about Yoda showing up for this because of this one question that I think Leslie has probably asked, and a bunch of Star Wars prequel fans have asked for a while. And the question is this: how does Yoda know about the Sith rule of 2? Because that's always a question that seemed a little weird. How come he knows about it? It's this super secret thing that the Sith have used to stay alive and stay hidden from the Jedi. And yet, when we see Darth Maul, in the aftermath of Darth Maul being killed and Qui-Gon's funeral happening in The Phantom Menace, Yoda just suddenly comes out with this Sith rule of 2 about this legally extinct.
I don't think George Lucas knows that answer, but I'm interested to find out.
Like, how do they not recognize the Sith? They're in the galaxy. And then there's like that scene in Phantom Menace where Mace and Yoda are talking about the Sith, and literally like Palps
no
is
doubt
like few people down.
He's literally right there. He's literally right there, just like smirking.
Qimir in the forest, dude.
But that's why I'm really excited that Yoda is here and Yoda's going to be involved with it, because as all of us who've read the High Republic know, Yoda is no stranger to covering things up if he thinks it's better for the Jedi Order. That dude covers a lot of shit up, and I feel like this is probably
note him not wanting to tell Luke that Vader is Anakin.
There we
Obi-Wan
go.
says that.
Or that
Yoda.
There's even a line.
It's all Yoda's fault.
Like, literally, there's a line cut from Return of the Jedi. I literally just found this out where Yoda says, Obi-Wan would have told you had I allowed him to.
It's in the novelization.
Yoda.
That remembers me. Like, as a kid, I would like remember that. I'm like, Yoda's sus. Even when I was a kid, I'm like, Yoda, what are you doing, dude?
Yoda is a sus boy. Like, even in Last Jedi, he still lies to Luke and covers up the fact that Rey took the Jedi text, which is just so like.
It's from a certain point of view, you know. Yeah. He's got like he's gonna get his like space lawyer out.
Yeah, he's been a funny little guy there, but like I totally could see Yoda getting involved in this, and maybe when the whole story of like Osha and Qimir has kind of run its course, maybe Yoda like deals with that and finds out about the Sith rule of 2. Maybe he even encounters Plagueis and Plagueis fakes his death, and that's where we kind of come away with, oh yeah, well there was a Sith flare up, but it's gone now. Yoda dealt with it. But like I kind of feel like season 2's, that's why I'm excited, because season 2 has the potential to get into some really like deep lore Sith stuff. Like we could see Yoda learn about Darth Bane. Exactly, and we could go to places like Moraband and find stuff like that out.
I just want to see Flippy Yoda versus the Stranger. Like, I want to see them go at it.
I want to see Puppet Yoda just like, sort of waddle around, and then he just suddenly goes CG and
turns CG.
Or maybe they do like what they did with Grogu, and they make it look like it's a puppet jumping around with the lightsaber. That would be hilarious. I would totally do that. I think Leslie and the team at the Acolyte are just about mad enough to try and do that and make it work.
We mentioned how did they not sense the Sith? Again, I did this in episode 5. I got to do it again. Again, just this picture. It's just how many Jedi are there in that picture? Like
7. Just like.
And I bring up the same thing with episode 5, where they're like, "Oh, so many Jedi, and they couldn't take down one Sith." Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah.
When they go, knowing they are about to take down Palpatine, who was a Sith master, all those council members, they go down like punks. Instantly.
They go down quicker than the red shirts in episode 5. Like, it's just crazy.
Those guys at least put up a fight. Kit Fisto just went down.
Yeah.
Kit Fisto got one hit in, and that was it. Like,
you're letting the side down, man. What is wrong with you?
Yeah.
Y'all are like council members.
They don't even get a hit in. They're just done.
Sassy got wrecked, man. Yeah. Like, come on.
Yeah, so I'm do not give me that nonsense when
the
5 Jedi had
you can't say that because George made that, and this isn't George.
Because George did it
They're
there.
trying to replace George Lucas. He sold it. This is why
all the people complaining were mean to him.
Exactly.
He wanted other people to tell stories in the universe. This is what he wanted.
You guys deal with all the fanboy bitching now. It's your stuff to deal with now. I'm sick of it.
You were on the internet when the prequels came out, right? Like you know
there
what
was
the
a whole South Park
was.
episode about this.
Mm-hmm.
South Park episodes are such a good a little frozen moment in time for pop culture
like a
and things like that. That's a really effed up episode, but it's there, and that's what y'all were saying.
Oh, for sure. I love Simon Pegg, but Simon Pegg was very kind of vocal about how much he hated the prequels to the point where he had an episode of Spaced, of him yelling at a kid about oh, you don't understand, you weren't there, and it was obviously poking fun. But even he's kind of admitted that that was the whole culture was just terrible, and it's just again. Here we are, it's very on brand with that. We've got a whole bunch of people who aren't facing up to that, who aren't acknowledging that kind of hatred. But yeah, I feel like this is a good time.
I just want to say before you do that, I just want to add on to that. Go back to 2015 and the lead up and how J.J. Abrams made The Force Awakens, which, to be upfront, I adore that movie.
I love The Force Awakens.
Love The Force Awakens, but there's specific things included in the narrative and how the sequel trilogy was made specifically because of how people reacted to the prequels and they wanted to distance themselves with it as much as possible. The fact that blowing up Coruscant and having Jar Jar Skeleton be on Jakku were things considered to be in the movie, but weren't. Again,
thank you so much, Lucasfilm Story Group, for talking me out of those.
The general consensus reaction to the prequels at that time. Do not try and say that this was always how it's been. It has not.
I keep reminding people, I'm like, Star Wars is definitely for kids, because as a kid, I loved the prequels. I still love them, obviously. I vividly remember going to each of those movies as a kid.
I was the kid in 2008 going on YouTube for the first time, looking at Windu versus Palpatine, seeing all the comments talking about how the prequels suck, and me being like, wait, what? Because I had no idea that people hated those movies. But again, that was the reaction. How many jokes had been made about Jar Jar and the end of Revenge of the Sith with the Vader no and everything. That was the pop cultural feeling about those movies for so many years, which is why so many of those actors did not want to come back to Star Wars. And that's why when
worse
they did,
things happened to them.
Yeah, it was such a euphoric moment when we got Ahmed Best back. We got Hayden Christensen back. We got Ewan back. Why do you think that happened?
And I think the same thing's going to happen with the sequel trilogy because, I'm in Orlando. I go to Hollywood Studios. I go to Galaxy's Edge all the freaking time because that's the perk of living. Only perk of living in Florida. Awesome. Is I do that, and there are so many little girls who dressed up like Rey. And one of the great things about Rey, the Galaxy's Edge is one of the few places in Florida, the Florida parks, where they actually walk around. So it's very it feels more real. So Rey's walking around and just seeing all these kids surround her and are so excited to see her. Even Kylo Ren, a lot of them are excited about. Some adults too, which I will not name here. But Arzu.
Oh, okay.
But just seeing their joys on their faces, I was with my friends and their two little boys, and they saw Rey and just the way their faces lit up. It's just so joyful.
I literally don't know how I'm going to react.
Such a lovely thing to happen, though. I love seeing that.
Again,
that's just they were our ages when we saw the prequels.
Exactly.
So they're gonna grow up and they're gonna have such nostalgia and love for those movies. So
because everyone's oh well, no one likes the sequels. You're living terminally online.
I wore my Rey shirt.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I just was a few weeks ago wearing my Rey shirt. Went to the grocery store. The cashier, who was definitely must have been 20 to 21. She's like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so excited about her movie."
Yes.
so excited about this, and she's my favorite character. She's my girl. There's all these people who aren't terminally online, who are just vibing with Star Wars.
Yeah,
and
the
they're the
people
majority.
you speak to may not like them, but that's because of the circle you surround yourself with.
An echo
100%.
chamber.
Like you form your even with us, the people that like the stuff that we're talking about, we have our own little circle and echo chamber of like, if we choose to mainly see things that we like, that's what we will see. That's how the internet works. Like again, I talked about this a couple weeks ago. I had a moment at work where someone comes up to me, he's like, "Oh, you're a Star Wars guy?" I was like, "Yeah," and I was like, I got scared because I'm like, "Oh, it's never a good thing when that happens." And they're like, "Are you watching The Acolyte?" And this was right after the witch episode, so I was like, "Yeah."
Yeah.
They're like, "What are you thinking?" And I was like, I really like it. And they're like, "Oh yeah, I do too." I was just kind of confused, and I had to explain a couple things to him, and he was like, "Oh no, I totally get it now."
All my
But,
friends who are just casual Star Wars fans, and they know I'm the crazy Star Wars person, they're texting me and they're loving The Acolyte. They're not like, reading all the books or, have a podcast about Star Wars. They're just watching it when it gets released on Disney Plus, and they're having a great time. That's the majority of people.
Because normal people don't get scared when they see a woman on screen or a person of color.
Yeah.
But again,
if you're watching Lucasfilm, take this kind of clip. There's plenty of us who love The Acolyte. We'd really like a season 2. Thank you.
But Don, now that tangent's over, I apologize again. What were you going to say?
I was going to transition us over to the very late arrival, which is Vernestra Rowe setting foot on the planet and immediately sensing Qimir, and all of our theories immediately were confirmed.
Gets out of there.
Her face
gone.
He put that helmet on quick.
He was scared of her.
Oh yeah,
it honestly, it looked like a mother about to ground their child.
Yeah,
and him being like, "Oh,
I thought I kicked your ass."
He's like, I expected her almost to go, "You little," like just her face. Wait.
So did she think he was dead?
Yeah, I think so.
She said, "You're alive." She said, "You're alive." Yeah. And
so
I love this reveal.
Vern that gave him the scars, right? Not
definitely.
Most likely.
Because
I'm so interested to see where this is going as well, because like I hypothesized for a while that we were going to get flashbacks, and I think if there's a season 2, we're absolutely going to get flashbacks to like Qimir as an apprentice, probably a different actor, but as an apprentice, like under Vernestra's tutelage. Maybe we see Plagueis kind of seduce him to the dark side, kind of like what happened with Ben Solo and Snoke. But it was just so really very well done. And again, it was all kind of laid out for us there. And again, Leslie Headland is a big Legends fan, because the light whip, as it originally appeared, was used by the Sith Lumia, who fought Luke Skywalker. And Luke Skywalker, in order to defeat her, crafted a second Shoto blade with a very short beam, just kind of like Qimir has, which it just all kind of fits really with the Legends reference. So again, this shows the people who are like kind of complaining about the lack of Legends stuff. There is so much Legends stuff in here, and such a thought and care for how it is implemented that resonates with the characters in the story.
She hates Legends and doesn't
it's
actually like Star Wars.
They're like nobody.
Mind.
And that's the thing, is like I was gonna say, it's again very clear that like Vernestra is the one who captures the whip, because just as a storytelling device, she uses it in the same episode. We see the scar, and she uses it to defeat those little bird creatures. And there's absolutely there's no reason other than as a storytelling device to do that.
Exactly.
I will find it kind of funny if we live in a sad world where we don't get a season 2, if that's the only thing we saw the light used for.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's another reason why we need a season 2, because we need to see the light whip in action.
Because we all were thinking when we saw those clips, like in the trailer, Vernestra and Kofar, like, oh, she's gonna come in, she's gonna wreck his shit. It's gonna be great, and then we didn't. But we now know
that for season 2.
There's a lot of deep stuff there. And Vernestra, again, I loved her in the books. She's making me not like her, but I also do like it because it's adding depth to the character.
Oh yeah, Vernestra's my favorite.
How did someone that was such a child prodigy, so whimsical in the Force, become this embodiment of what the Jedi were in the prequels, covering up things, letting Soul take the blame, having the fact that her apprentice turned to the dark side and is this Sith Lord. I'm eating it up.
Listen, I was in the gifted program, got my IQ tested. I was told I was very high, very smart. I'm so jaded and tired just in my 30s. I get it, Vernestra. I get it, girl. It's like the gifted girl who was given too much responsibility as a teenager. Yeah, I get it.
I get it.
110% get it.
I get it.
And she was my favorite.
Night at 15.
What?
There you go.
Some other things happened when I was 15, but but just in the High Republic, she was my favorite character, and I still love her. She is messy. She is doing some questionable things, but they're understandable. I don't agree with them, but I understand her, and that makes me love her so much. It's just like all these characters. There's a lot of slow moments in the series, but every single one of them, you understand their motivation. And that beautiful scene with the Kyber crystal bleeding and with Soul, I don't think would have been as powerful if we didn't have all this slow buildup, all these backstories and things like that. So it was like it was so worth it, even just for this episode.
My biggest criticism 100%. Of the show that I've had is the fact that it's fallen victim to the Disney Plus 8 episode curse.
Oh yeah, they could have definitely done 12 episodes.
They could have done 12, and I think it would have worked. But I think that's what's so impressive about this finale is we, like many other Disney Plus shows, went into it like, well, how are they going to finish things in this amount of time? And with a lot of the shows, they were able to get some of it done, but not all of it. And then we thought they were going to get a second season, and they didn't. So it just ended up kind of like weird and incomplete. I am so shocked and surprised and excited that we got so much resolution that worked in this episode. It was, it was just so great to watch it all unfold. I say
that's
this
been my
is
biggest complaint. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
That's been my biggest complaint with the MCU is what you were saying about how it's such a short episode count, and then by the end it feels like you're rushing through.
You're rushing, and then the show is just kind of like.
And that's what you were scared about, right?
They just end, and then you just like you like them when they were coming out, but then you just time goes on, you don't really think about them much anymore. And then I'm like, I hope the Acolyte doesn't fall into the same pitfalls. And like we even had that with like Book of Boba Fett and Obi-Wan, and like where it's like you could have used a couple extra episodes. Ahsoka was another one where I was, even though I loved that show, was hesitant to fully form my thoughts on it until we got the confirmation that there was a second season.
Oh,
because
it would have been terrible.
I was like, if that's the end, I'm like, well, then we have to resolve all this in the Mando movie, and it's going to be rushed, and it's going to be bad.
Somehow, Sabine and Ahsoka returned into their galaxy.
Stuck on a whole other galaxy. It's like,
Baby Yoda's like, I'll bring him back. Hi guys, I got him.
Force leaps into the other galaxy on a whale, space whale.
I think the fact that this was pitched as a multi-season show, and the fact that the engagement's been so high, is enough to where I'm like 97% confident that we're getting a second season. That's based off of no inside information. That's just based off of instinct.
Renew Acolyte was trending a bunch.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
Which I know the Acolyte trending could just because of hate.
But it was trending.
But the Renew Acolyte was trending a lot.
My whole thing is, it's like, is this gonna it's like, how long are we gonna wait? Is this gonna be a couple days or a couple weeks from now? We're gonna get a Twitter like, oh, the Acolyte has been renewed for season 2, or is it gonna be
the next few days
thing? Is it gonna be a Comic-Con thing, or are they gonna?
It might be a D23. D23.
D23 seems likely. I hope they don't stretch it out to Celebration, because they love doing that with the animated shows now, where they're like, during the panel, like, we're coming back for another season.
Well, with Bad Batch, it always made sense, because Bad Batch always had like that element of.
Imagine if the Bad Batch ended on season 2, they didn't get.
Just like Ted's dead and Omega's captured, and like everyone's sad.
Andrew would have turned to the dark side simply because one of the last major plot points is Sid like betraying the Batch.
Don, it's a different show, and you're getting me upset.
We're already upset about what happened.
about this finale, though, is that even if we don't get a second season, I'll be very upset, but it works as a conclusion to this narrative.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of a character being falling to the dark side, actually exploring that kind of narrative from a different point of view, it just succeeded with flying colors. I was going to say about Amandla Stenberg, the way they play that scene, the tremor in their voice when Osha says, "Is that true?" And just like each line that they deliver, like the "Why didn't you tell the Jedi?" and the "Stop talking," all of it comes from this really like. There's like Amandla is just like playing the character as barely holding back this tidal wave of anger and grief, and like as you both said like earlier, like the fact of like, oh, it's totally believable that she would flip in this scene and respond by like killing Sol. It's kind of like, it reminded me a lot of like Captain America Civil War, like the third act, where you've got that whole conflict between Iron Man and Captain America, like over Bucky. And while Captain America is totally right when he says, you know, Bucky wasn't responsible for his actions, he was brainwashed, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, Iron Man comes back. My mom.
And I remember it's watching that film and thinking, oh God, like I totally get that emotional response. I get that feeling, that guttural
people's mamas.
Exactly. Yeah. It's his mom. Like I love my mom, and I know for a fact if that kind of thing happened, it would be very hard to get me to listen to that kind of reason. And it's like, it's the same.
Don't have your best
Osha.
friend kill your mother. That's the moral of the story here.
Don't let your father figure to all prospective father figures, don't murder a witch just because she's turning into black smoke. You know, she might just be trying to protect a kid.
It was scary, but it's again the fact that he doubled down it was a lot.
It's like Luke says though in The Rise of Skywalker, which I can't believe I'm quoting, but confronting fear is the destiny of a Jedi, and Sol had a chance to confront fear and he gave into it rather than resisting, rather than like allowing himself to kind of confront it properly. And I think he feared Osha turning against him or losing Osha, and I think that's also a reason why he just never owned up to the truth of it partly. And ultimately the irony is his worst fear comes home to roost. Osha completely turns against him and chooses the dark side. And it's this weird thing where it's both very sad and tragic because she didn't have to fall to the dark side in order to reconnect with the Force. But the way the Jedi in her life, with the exception of like Jeki and Yord, the way the position they kind of put her in, it was really her only option, or at least the only option she felt was possible to access the Force again. And it's what makes the narrative really interesting, because it's dark as hell, and it's really twisted, but there's also a truth to it and an honesty and even a catharsis to those scenes that just is very powerful. And it's really all anchored by the performances of the actors. You just couldn't really sell this without Amandla playing both of these twins, reconciling, you know, like having that scene under the Bunta tree where like they reunite, and Mae does like arguably the most Jedi thing in the whole show and lets go of her attachment to Osha. Like, accepts that the whole time. It's so heartbreaking because it's like she's wanted is to reunite with her sister,
both
and
choose each other as their reasoning for the choice that they make. And this is something I still don't know how I feel about yet. Mae not having her memory anymore.
It was the only way the stranger would have let her go.
Where the stranger would have let her go.
And
that's the only reason.
And there are some Revan parallels there. And I'm interested in seeing how it works with her. And I think having her have this amnesia and working with a Jedi is going to be an interesting way of her, like, kind of, it'll be her way of like how Osha had an identity outside the Coven and Mae was never given that chance.
Yeah.
This, like, having this almost fresh start could be how she forms her own, like, personality and attachment. And you see just little things on how this episode was framed, of like how Mae is starting to form a little bit of a bond with Pip. She
says, "Hang on, Pip."
Yeah. And Pip even fights back against Osha, which I thought was a nice touch there. But I am very intrigued of where this is all going to go, and just the tearful, like, I'm going to find you again, and just
I think they will. I think they will reunite. But just to
they're
quickly
so
add on
connected.
They really are. That's
I
such a
was
beautifully done
worried
scene.
that they were going to like
Combine.
either combine
I was
or
terrified of that.
have Qimir last second, boom, stabs her. Like, oh, now you have no one. Like, now you have to fully accept me.
I kind of think it's interesting
but-
though, because it's almost like Mae is this kind of like bargaining chip in a way for him to kind of like, and I think it's what's interesting because while they're very much like the hand holding scene at the end is very much kind of showing that they're kind of in sync, like ETL
They
shippers
can-
everywhere,
yeah.
rejoice.
What did I do?
Oh, what was
What
that?
did I do again?
That was awesome.
There we
I didn't know
go.
you could do that.
didn't-
That's awesome.
I knew the thumbs up thing. If you do thumbs up, which I don't know
I
if they
didn't
know
know that.
my
I'm
See,
gonna
I've
try
done that a
that.
million times and it doesn't work.
Oh, it's not working for me. I'm not strong.
You got to
enough
make sure you
yet.
do the heart thingy like this.
I'm not
Oh,
strong
that's
enough in the
cool.
force. All right, well,
Okay. Well, we learned
that's-
something
My fingers are
new.
going the
that's
wrong
a
way.
first.
That's
That's
awesome.
the first moment.
I'm gonna
here
use that
before
for
the Republic.
stream.
That's
Yeah.
awesome, Candace. Wow.
But
I,
I love that Osha has agency. That is so
Yes.
refreshing to see in a heroine
Yes.
in these sci-fi fantasies. Is that she gets to make a choice, and it was just so good. And yeah, we all didn't want her to like kill Soul, obviously, but there's such a beautiful parallel of the first time she actually meets Soul, where he kneels down to her, hands her his lightsaber,
Yep.
Yeah,
He-
that's a
and
really good
then
point.
that's how he dies. He's
Yep.
kneeling down. She's holding his lightsaber. It's just
I
it's
do love the
poetry,
Parallels are
visual,
right?
great.
too.
That's
It
what
is.
George
the
Lucas
visual,
loved.
too, of her igniting the saber to swipe at Qimir and it's still
Oh,
being
the way
blue
the
and then
blade
slowly
turns-
turning red.
That's what I mean. Like, it
Kind
just,
of like
it just feels like the
symbolizing that
truth
like the version of Osha that Soul knew is now
is
fully
gone.
gone.
Yeah, like and like
And
her
that he
emotion is
caused it.
fully unleashed. Yeah, and he caused it. Her
But this
her
was
emotions were being so held back, and in killing Soul, she's finally able to kind of unleash that and have that more authentic version of herself, albeit a version swayed to the dark side.
I'm going to shout out Alex of Star Wars Explained, as I often do, when he mentioned in his review that like the act of bleeding a Kyber crystal for a Sith is often like a rite of passage, using
Yes.
a Jedi's weapon to kill them, and then bleeding the crystal and taking that as their weapon. Like Osha literally goes through a Sith rite of passage here. She kills a Jedi and then bleeds the crystal to take as her own. And then it led to the glorious hand holding, which was just, I loved it.
Which Manny suggested, actually.
Again,
Yes.
And they
shout
did
out to the
consider,
bear again. Hands. I need
They
hands.
did
Nicely
also
done, dude.
consider doing a kiss, but they were like, again, about Osha's agency, and she's in such this emotional place, which is just so refreshing to not just have a ship tease, have it actually confirm that was the intention.
I love
And
that. Yeah.
I just, when you're in a Star Wars with a lot of wars, expect a little romancing to go on, because there's a lot of
Sure.
high, emotions,
Two
Yeah.
Sith in love that potentially Plagueis has to eventually put against each
Or
other.
they retire on a nice little planet, do a little metal shop work,
I know. It's like I
Mhm.
know Leslie really loves Clone Wars, and she cited season 5 a lot because of the Wrong Jedi storyline. Another thing that happened in season 5 was a former Sith acolyte taking on an apprentice, and his master coming in to deal with the pair of them, saying, "You have become a rival." I could see Plagueis. I think Plagueis will be interesting. I think he might want to try and play them off against one another, even, or potentially just wait for them to turn against each other. Because I was going to say about Mae's mind wipe, that does kind of put Osha in the position of not being able to fully trust Qimir, because she knows that he would have killed Mae had she not intervened and offered herself up to be trained. And I think while it's really interesting that it puts them in this position of, while they're very much on the same page and they both like believe in the allure, the dream of the dark side, the sell of it, like, oh, you have freedom from your emotions. And I feel like Plagueis is going to be the not so fast thing that kind of comes in to say, oh yeah, but there's all this other baggage that comes with being part of the dark side that's just going to be like really interesting. I'm going to briefly add on as well to what you said, Andrew, about Mae's mind wipe, is that I think you're absolutely right that it's going to be really interesting to see her like severed from her attachment to Mae, because her attachment to Mae and the Coven has driven so much of her personality, so much of her ideology. And now that she has actually relinquished it through her own choice, through her own desire to see Osha have the life she's always wanted, she kind of like learned the lesson that her mother did all those years ago. It's going to be really interesting to see her now develop into a fuller version of herself alongside Vernestra, because Vernestra says, I think Vernestra means it when she says, you poor girl, you've been through so much. And while obviously she is kind of like covering up the Sith's involvement and the twins' involvement in what happened on Brendok and the subsequent like killing of several Jedi, I think she's also doing it to protect Mae. She knows that Mae has been taken advantage of and not allowed her own agency in any of this, and has kind of been left as a scapegoat. And so she does the only thing she can in the situation, and she covers it up. She protects Mae. It's partly to go after her own apprentice because she knows that Qimir is responsible for a lot of this. But it kind of shows that maybe Vernestra is going to be like the first real kind of like nurturing influence for Mae since Mother Anastasia, and that's just going to be a really interesting dynamic to watch play out.
Yeah, it's going to be even more tragic when Qimir kills her next season.
Oh, don't even.
But I do think it's I'm going to really enjoy when we do get a season 2. Seeing Amandla play these two dual roles and have their storylines be separate and not constantly interacting with each other, and like really, like you said, forming Mae as her own character, where she doesn't have the baggage of everything that happened on Brendok affecting her. But then going to Vern and that conversation with not only Mae but with the Chancellor, and just seeing how she just throws everything on Soul and does the High Republic specialty of covering bad stuff up. This is why I said it, to me, that symbolized the end of what we know as the High Republic era, of the Jedi at their peak. The golden age of the Jedi, to me, ended right then and there, with the Senate saying, oh, we need to have more external control over the Jedi, and everything that happened in that scene. It was just like, all right, it's a big moment. Like, Vern, what are you doing, girly? But also,
it shows why the council was so distrusting of Qui-Gon in Phantom Menace. They literally were like, yeah, no, the last Jedi Master who took an interest in a child connected to a virgin, they did some bad stuff, and we paid for it. So,
I did love the little bit of her giving Soul a Jedi funeral, though. That was nice.
Yes, that was great.
That was nice.
I liked that.
That was very nice.
Nice touch.
99, a nice touch. But I just, the one thing, the tweet I saw today was great. It's like me whenever someone tells me to do something bad at work. It's like, does the name Osha mean anything to you? I'm framing that and putting that at my desk at work. It's happening. But again, so many things that can happen in this next season while also wrapping things up, wrapping this part of the story up, which very few finales that could be the end, could not be, often do. Because especially there are certain times where shows expect a second season and end fully like thinking they're getting one, and then they don't. So it's just like, all right, well, now we're never going to know what's going to happen. And then other shows think that's it. They end things up perfectly. And they're like, actually, you're coming back for another season, pal. And then they have to like kind of figure out where we're going to go from there. But I think for us not yet knowing, I think Lucasfilm knows, obviously, but like us as the audience not yet knowing where this is going, like, are we going to get another season? Is this it? I think it works for both. Like, if this is just a season finale, it works great. If this is just the end of this story in this part of Osha and Mae's story, it works great. And again, I'm very excited for the future. And then Yoda walking in at the end, or not Yoda, Vernestra walking in at the end, finally seeing Yoda. I am glad that episode freaking 1 on this show, I called that Yoda was going to be the quote unquote post-credit stinger. And I was right. I was freaking right, because Leslie was like, oh yeah, Yoda's not in the show. I'm like, yeah, I don't believe you. And He was just for half a
Liam
second.
Neeson all over again.
But I called it. And I get him being in this cast of characters next season. I think is going to be great. And to get to see Yoda at this point, to have that familiarity with the prequels and have that connection, but also see him with a whole new cast of characters, a whole new different story, and at a different point in his life where he's still old, but he's younger. It's going to be interesting. I want to see him in the white and golds in live action. That's going to be really nice. And again, just I'm so excited for everything that we have potentially on the horizon. It's just I can't say enough good things about what we got to wrap things up here. It was a very, very good finale.
Some might say it was a hell of a good finale, Andrew.
Oh, that reminds me. I forgot. Because people were like, Star Wars saying hell in Star Wars? Exhibit A.
Your tauntaun will freeze before you reach the first marker. Then I'll see you in hell.
It's only like a 44-year-old movie or something.
Actually, time is 1997 when Owen says there'll be hell to pay if Luke doesn't finish his chores. So it's in the very Star Wars ever.
Exactly.
Which George wrote.
George wrote
like,
that.
Tell me you haven't watched Star Wars without telling me you haven't watched Star Wars.
How many times
like
do people
the
quote that Han line?
It's so famous. I remember as a kid being like, wow, he's being really mean to that rebel guy. Like, he's just trying to help you, dude. And just like also like Han Solo said a bad word.
Yeah,
and also that like the guy's kind of right. That poor Tauntaun does freeze to death. So like it's a really funny line in amidst a really like dark scene, but that's also very Empire. So
I had a friend of mine that messaged me, was like, that "see you in hell" Jedi line is one of the worst lines I've ever heard. I'm like, dude, you're better than this. Like, how is it any different from the Han line?
Yeah.
Like how?
Like it's very kind of like I mean, there's a Star Wars version of hell anyway, and it's also very kind of like telling because technically, I mean, as far as Mae's concerned, Sol pretty much did go to hell. Really, he went to his own personal hell, which was back to Brendok, and
the same people
got killed by his Padawan.
The same people that like hated this were like probably upset that we didn't get "fuck the Empire" in Andor. Like, again,
I wouldn't have minded a fuck
I wouldn't
the
have
Empire,
minded it either.
personally.
But it's like if you want one and you don't like the other, like it doesn't make any sense to me. Especially when we've seen almost this exact quote word for word in another Star Wars that is often considered the best Star Wars and is one of the most quoted lines from Han Solo, one of the most loved characters of all time. Forget just Star Wars, but a woman said
like the
so
peak
it's
of his
not good.
awesomeness, arguably.
Yeah. I don't want to again. I'm so glad that this discourse is going to be going away momentarily because it's so dumb every week and it's so weird.
To bring it full circle, like just the fact that the
circle,
Acolyte has stuck the landing so hard with like its characters and its exploration and kind of almost Game of Thrones-esque storytelling of making you think the story is going one way and then kind of pulling the rug out from under you and going, oh no, actually it's gone in this completely different direction. Like by the end of this, most of the principal cast are dead. They've been wiped out, and we have a handful of characters left pursuing a very different path from what we thought the opening episodes of the series were going to be. And it's just a really good show. It's really unique. It's like nothing we've seen from a Star Wars show before. And I love that this can coexist alongside the more traditional fare like The Mandalorian, or even the more kind of like fan servicey stuff like Ahsoka and Obi-Wan, and the more politically grounded stuff like Andor. It's just really cool stuff. Like Star Wars, it's a really good time to be a Star Wars fan. Absolutely. if you're not a rage grifter.
And I think once we hit episode 5, you could kind of tell when they like that side was like grasping at straws of like, what can we say this week? And every week it was like stupider and stupider and stupider. And I think like it reached its conclusion here. The one thing that I will say, if we do get a second season, and this is my like not concern, but like, what are they going to do? How are they going to make it work? And I'm sure they will. I was ruminating earlier today, and I was like, you know what? I kind of think in hindsight, maybe they should have kept Yoda Jackie alive. But I'm like, the stakes, how it changed the stakes of the show was so good, and I don't want to erase that moment because those moments were tremendous. But it's like I feel like if the Jedi side next season is just Vern and Mae, you're kind of missing a little bit. But obviously, I'm like, well, no, they're just going to introduce some new characters, and we're going to have Yoda, so it's going to be fine.
I trust Leslie to create interesting original Jedi characters, and that's even if assuming we don't get like more stalwart Jedi characters, because Plo Koon could show up, Kiadi-Mundi. There's the potential for a lot of
me really loving your Jecki and Soul and like not having them. It's going to be like.
We're all still a little heartbroken from that development, even while the storytelling has been so good, because they were such good characters.
So I guess before we wrap things up, we can kind of just give like a brief overview on the season as a whole and like potential things you'd like to see in the second season. So Candace, if you want to go first, just like overall thoughts since you haven't been on here before, and just things you'd like to see next time around from Leslie Headland and crew.
More hand-holding of Qimir and Osha and maybe others. But no, I really want more exploration of the Sith lore. Just something that we haven't seen in live action. We've only had like little touches of. And just the deep exploration of it. And also, does just being in the dark side make you a Sith? Is Osha technically a Sith? And just having those like those boxes, are you automatically just all in by that point?
Yeah, that's going to be very curious because I've always been curious. I mean, not only lore, but just like outside universe things like what makes this dark side user a Sith and what makes this one that like to dive further into what it means to fully be a Sith Lord, how that further go into the rule of two and the ideology and why, like, say, Asajj Ventress or Kylo Ren weren't Sith, quote unquote. But Osha and the Stranger, we assume, are now. So it's like, I want to see more of that. I obviously want to like get like real dark and weird with the lore. I would love to see that. And then, like I mentioned, I want to see Mae's interaction with the Jedi and kind of to see her go through the same journey that Osha went through before we met her character, but we're just told about off screen. And for her to potentially succeed as Vernestra's new student, if she makes it out of the season, I think would be very nice to have, especially with Qimir, have the girl that he wanted to be his original pupil be trained by the master that threw him away, and to get another confrontation, I think would be very nice. I also just, I don't know if it's possible, but Yoda did have a Padawan in the first episode, and I would like to maybe see her come back and play a bigger role and see how she reacts to her master's death.
She's probably happy she wasn't invited.
Yeah, like, oh yeah, they're all dead. But
she's like, oh, okay.
I would like to get
a big time bullet on that one.
A little bit more of Osha's reaction and her deep feelings about losing everyone on Kofar and about Soul's betrayal. And I think having deep, intimate conversations with Qimir is going to be very great. And selfishly, this is just me being nerdy. Don knows where I'm going here. We have 2 new Sith. We have not had a new Darth title in live action since 2002. I just need to hear the lines, "You shall be known as Darth so-and-so," for both of them. And that's why I thought, because, again, this is me being merch heavy here, but I was like, okay, so they haven't announced a Black Series for the Stranger yet. And my theory was it's because they were going to reveal his Sith name in the finale, and that didn't happen. So now I'm just like, all right, we'll just hurry up and release the shit already. But
it's going to be like Grogu in season 2, in Mando season 2. They're going to wait a whole season.
I want to get a name.
They're going to give us the name.
That's my one problem with Disney Star Wars is them not naming characters.
I don't
like the Stranger goes hard. I will admit that. But like the child, the client, the weak way. I'm done with that shit.
I'm partial to Darth Venomous, the title from Legends of like either one of Tenebrus's or Plagueis's secondary students, mainly just because it sounds like Venom, haha, smile. It just kind of fits with the helmet.
Just go
but
with
like
Darth Teeth. They just take a page from the fandom.
I wouldn't be opposed to that either. But yeah, I think I've already kind of like said a lot of what I would personally like, and I kind of feel like it lines up with what you both have said. So I'll just keep it simple. Yeah, I'd love more Sith exploration. I kind of want to get really in. Like, I would like to explore some of the Sith's history with the Jedi and the fact that the Jedi were so traumatized by the Sith that it affected their ability to engage with other Force-sensitive groups. Just to kind of give like further context to like why they were fearful of the Witch Coven, regardless of the fact that their actions were bad in intervening. And I'd like to see more development for Osha. I really want to, and Mae. I want to see Mae kind of go more towards the light and kind of like engage with the Jedi some more. Have a confrontation between the sisters. Have one even further in the light, one even further in the dark. I want to see some Sith infighting with Plagueis and Venomous, and it'd be really cool if we got like the detail of having Yoda learn about the Sith Rule of Two through this. And hey, just throwing this out there, I wouldn't be opposed to a Darth Bane cameo with the Mark Hamill voice. That would be kind of cool. It was cool when it happened.
We get like
Wars.
another Yoda, like Clone Wars season 6 kind of thing, where he learns, maybe doesn't like fully meet Plagueis, but learns of.
We could have Qimir meet Darth Bane. That would be pretty cool. Maybe him and Osha have to go there. Maybe they need to get like a virgin, access another Vergence in the Force, so they have power to like defeat Plagueis. I mean, we know it won't work, but it would be kind of cool anyway.
Well, we do know that like the pattern for recent Star Wars shows, be it Mando, Rebels, more than likely Andor. We saw it with the Bad Batch of having a more contained first season, and then further expanding to introduce more familiar things that we're familiar with in the canon. And we saw the first glimpses of that with Yoda and with Plagueis. And I think that you have some opportunity to do some really cool things and tie things further to the prequels in season 2, and maybe even go further back in time with more High Republic characters or events, like how the Great Disaster is referenced.
I almost forgot. I want my Porter Engel cameo, man. Like, come on. Nick Offerman as Porter Engel. It would be the best cameo in the whole show. It would just be great.
It would be great. But yeah, no.
Also, you shouldn't hold the lightsaber like that. It could burn your hand with the exposed Kyber crystal.
Oh man. I'm thinking of the Kyber crystal scene again. It's so good. But I think we can.
Candace, you are so going to win that. I'd be really shocked if you don't win that archive segment, because that's such a good pick, I've got to say.
Yeah.
But I think that we can put a bow on things for now. I'm sure we'll do another Acolyte episode further down the line. But thanks everyone for joining us today to talk about the finale of season 1. Hopefully not the only season of the Acolyte. #renew the Acolyte. I want to thank Candace for joining us today. Thank you for coming on the show and talking about this awesome finale with us. Real quickly, because I know you got things to do, places to be. Where can everyone find you? What are you working on? And what do you got going on soon?
We have the Acolytes for Equality. Sorry, the dog and me. We have the Acolytes for Equality GoFundMe for Equality now. We are currently at this time of recording over $2,000. We're trying to get just a little bit more. We have some really amazing prizes, which include the Phase 1 High Republic box set, which is leather bound, all signed by the authors. We also have a bust of the Death Troopers, which came out in like 2010, and there's only 1,500 of them. We have
awesome.
like a bunch of other books signed by the author, art, things that are open both to US, international. So just a bunch of prizes, and it all goes for a great cause that Amandla is passionate about. And just in the US, at least, like women's rights, we need some help. right now.
Incredibly
Sure do.
important.
So
Incredibly important
it's
stuff.
a very important thing.
Yeah,
Definitely.
100%. Like all my support to that that fundraiser. Then that's just fantastic. The result that you've like reached already. Like I really hope that it just continues to go from strength to strength there.
Find us at thegeekywaffle.com, the geeky_waffle on Twitter, the Geeky Waffle everywhere else. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel because that's where the live stream we're going to do like 5 hours of content for this.
Perfect.
And we'll be announcing some of the winners. So it's exciting.
Go subscribe. They have some really awesome stuff.
Geeky Waffle and check out their live stream. It's going to be awesome.
It's gonna be
Donovan,
awesome.
as for yourself.
So you can find me on Twitter at Donovan Mead, where I will be like posting like threads about the Acolyte and rambling about like football and politics. You can also find me on TikTok at Donovan McComish. You can find me on Instagram at Donovan_McComish. I have the same handle for my Threads account. And Blue Sky, you can find me at donovanmccomish.bsky.social. Thanks once again to Arzu, for sending me the initial invitation to join Blue Sky. Much appreciated. I am also a question writer for Star Wars Inner Galaxy Epic Confrontations. We've got a litany of cool videos of like various Star Wars personalities going head to head over some trivia.
Just dropped today, I believe.
The new video just dropped today. So if you like Star Wars trivia like matches, then definitely come and check us out. It's been a lot of really fun stuff. And I am also, along with Andrew and Connor and Amy and a bunch of other people on the SWE Discord, I am a writer and producer for SWEF, Star Wars Editor Fiction, a collection of short stories that try to stay within canon, but also take a few things here and there from Legends. I've written the one story that came out. It was called Scars of War. It's basically all about dealing with Star Wars and pain, PTSD, that kind of thing. And it's about clone troopers and Jedi on the run. So if you like any of that kind of stuff, definitely check it out. It was a lot of fun to write.
Perfect. As for myself, you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok at Starlight Andrew. You can follow the podcast on Twitter at For the Repub Pod and on Instagram and TikTok at For the Republic Pod. So if we have any updates on the show, like how we did this week when our episode 7 recap was delayed, you can find out there, and we'll keep you updated on everything going there. Our YouTube For the Republic Podcast, help us grow there. You can also find the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to your podcast, you can find us there. StarlightJournal.blog is where I write my thoughts about movies. I'm going to try to get something done before I leave because I am leaving for Disney on Saturday. So I will be gone for a week. So there's going to be a week's break between episodes. But when I come back, because this is my first time going to Galaxy's Edge, I want to do like a special bonus, like me talking about experiencing it for the first time. When I come back, we will also probably have a full in-depth season discussion for the Acolyte once we're back as well. And then from there, we have a bunch of stuff we need to catch up on that we missed when we were on break. So we'll talk about that. And then we don't have another new show to cover until Skeleton Crew in December. So we'll be going back into our Clone Wars rewatch. Picking back up with season 2 and going from there, and it'll be fun to do that for mainly like focus on Clone Wars for the rest of the year. I think will be very fun. So thank you everyone for listening. Thank you again to Candace for joining us. Make sure to support all the good fundraiser goodness over at Geeky Waffle. And until next time, we'll see everyone later, and may the Force be with you always.